So here we are, September 11th, 2021. I wanted to give you my thoughts and have this basically non scripted. Usually we script most of our programs here. But I wanted to share with you folks some of my recollections, which was I was in Hoboken, New Jersey when the towers were hit. I watched a lot of the event right from my roof of my apartment building where I was living at the time. I I heard about it on the radio at that time. There was a report of a small plane crash, and then I turned on the TV, and lo and behold, the plane was going into the second tower, and then we lived through the fog of war, so to speak, for the first day there. I had my uncle Kenny, who was evacuating people from Manhattan on his tugboat. Also, people weren't allowed to take the subways or the Holland or the Lincoln Tunnel out, as I recall, where people actually had to go from Manhattan up to the George Washington Bridge, which is, I believe, a 10-mile walk. Then they were getting driven across the bridge, and then they had to walk another 10 miles from the George Washington Bridge to Hoboken. And all along the river there, they were watching emergency vehicles, emergency boats, you name it, all coming down from the other side of the river. And it was just a complete horrible mess. One of the reasons why we developed eventually what became JCP Technical Services was to do what our recent programs have been, was for disaster preparedness, emergency response, things of that nature for the public. But this isn't really about us today. My children are now old enough where we're able to discuss with them what happened on 9/11 and try to get the historic perspective. A lot of the people who were younger then, we're talking like 25 years old or younger today, they don't really remember 9/11. They remember some images if they're 25. But let's face it, 20-year-old people were not even born yet. And I think it's important for us people who were there, maybe not necessarily in New York or Shanksville, Pennsylvania, or the Pentagon, but people who were alive then, to share what exactly happened on 9/11. Write it down. If you have enough courage, do a YouTube upload or TikTok, or choose your medium. Write it down. Right? Writing it down is proven to be the most effective means of communicating in our world. When you consider we're still reading what the ancient Egyptians read and wrote, right, on the pyramids, thanks to the Rosetta Stone. But record. Let them know what it was, so we can all remember how we felt that day, what exactly happened. Right now we're getting a lot of baloney that goes along with this stuff, conspiracy theories, this, that, the other thing. People, it was some of our first experience. Facebook didn't exist, so we were dealing with Dr. Google back then. And for about 10 years you had to deal with conspiracy theories at every event we went to that was 9/11 created, and other things. So remember what exactly happened. Communicate that. I know I'm rambling here, but what else is new? The other thing is this. Remember 9/12. We remember 9/11, but let's remember 9/12. How unified we were that day. How we were all how 9/11 changed. We realized on 9/12 how 9/11 changed. About a year after the initial stuff going on 9/11 with the World Trade Center, I had the opportunity to start doing some private cleanups in the area. They were cleaning up for years, right, with all these little private cleanups. And on 9/10, we were concerned about a congressman having an affair with an intern or a page, or along those lines, and then that the female ending up dead, and we don't know what the full details were. 9/11 happened, all those headlines went away for about a month in the papers, when we used to read newspapers. And then 9/12 came about. We were all unified. We had Congress singing patriotic songs on the steps of the Capitol, both Republicans and Democrats. We were unified. We weren't stratified like we are today. And I think that if we were unified like that again, like we were on 9/12 and after 9/11, we would solve most of the problems that we have today in our country and in our Western world. Unfortunately, it took over 3,000 people to make that happen, and thousands more with ongoing illnesses and cancers. So that's my thought on 9/11. One, share what happened that day, but remember what happened on 9/12. We were all unified. We were all working together. There was no Republican, no Democrat, no liberal, no conservative, no libertarian, no socialist, none of this stuff. We were all unified. What I want everyone to do is to go take a moment out. If you believe in prayer, pray for the families, pray for the survivors, pray for everybody who was involved that day, who got sick, who lost a loved one, who's dealing with long-term PTSD issues. I know of 3 people who ended up committing suicide or having a long, put them into a deep depression and really negatively impacted their lives on 9/11. So let's say a prayer for those people. Let's remember those people we lost and everything else. That's all I have. For Safety Wars, this is Jim Polzel.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.